Alrighty, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to take this half moon here, and I've cleaned out the slot it goes into, and we're going to take some silicone here. Okay, place that back in there, and now if you look, I'm going to put a dab here, not too much, just a little bit. Put a little dab there. Okay, another place you want to put silicone, wherever two pieces of metal come to meet here. We're going to put a little bit there. And if you look, the metal comes together right here. There's two different pieces coming together. And then we're going to put some there, some there. Now look, that is plenty of silicone. You do not need to get crazy with it, because all it's going to do, it's going to squirt out, then it's going to become hard, and it's going to fall down in there, and it's going to eventually wind up in an oil passage somewhere, and it can cause a lot of problems. So do not get crazy with the silicone. All right, I'm going to set this valve cover on there. All right, to smooth this out of the way, and set this on top here. Oh, hang on. Get it the right way. Trying to get it to go around the lip of the spark plug tubes here. Just trying to be careful. There we go. All right, so I just took my screwdriver. I just kind of run it around the lip of the spark plug tube. Real easy. I didn't try to force it at all. All right, let me get my bolts and then we'll tighten it down. Okay, this is right here is what your valve cover bolts look like, just in case you forgot. And I put them all in there. I just use my gun to draw them down a little bit. We're going to tighten them to 71 inch-pounds. Now, when I put it in there, I started off with like that one and snugged it, snugged it, snugged it, snugged it. And I'm working like that to draw it down on the cylinder head evenly. So let's do that. So start in the middle somewhere. Might have to get a little bit of an extension. To make it a little bit easier. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and start snugging them down, and they're not even torqued yet. So let me go through and do that. Okay, I went through and snugged them all down. All right, that's torqued to 71 inch-pounds. Come on, stay on there. Okay, that one's torqued. And now I'm going to go through all of them one more time just to make sure they're all nice and torqued to spec. I went through the cylinder head on the back side and I cleaned all that up, and I took the little half moon out. I put silicone on it, and I'm going to install it now. The back side is going to be harder to do than the front side, obviously. It's going to take a lot of patience. I'll probably not film me putting it on there. For one, it's hard to get the camera back in here, and two, you probably don't want to hear the words I'm going to say. But I do want to show you where I want to add silicone. I'll see if I can get you back there. All right, so like I said before, where two pieces of metal come together, if you look, this piece of metal and this piece of metal are two separate metals. See that? You see the divide right there. So I want to put silicone here. There's another one on this side. I want to put silicone here. Might clean that up a little bit better. I need to put silicone here and on the other side, which you're not going to probably be able to see. So let me dab that silicone on there. Like I said, you do not want to use too much silicone because you don't want it falling off into the engine. So let me get to that, and I'm going to go ahead and put the valve cover on, and then I'll tighten it down and we'll get back to you. So I got the valve cover on the back side. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So now we're moving on to spark plugs. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to adjust this spark plug gap before we put it in there. You need to make sure that that little gap for that electrode is gapped properly. The spec for a new spark plug like this is 39 to 43 thousandths. And so you get yourself one of these little tools here, and what it is thin on this side, and as you rotate it, it gets thicker and thicker and thicker. So you put this in here, and you just kind of turn it around, and like with this one right now, if you can look, it's at 40 thousandths, which is perfect. If I needed to go a little more, I would just kind of keep forcing this along, and it will slowly open that gap up. If that gap is too high, one thing you do is just kind of tap it on the table gently, so to speak, to adjust your spark plug gap back down. But that one's pretty good. Now this one, see, this one's at about 44 thousandths, so that's a little too high. So I'm going to take and just tap it on a solid surface. I just went over there to the vise there, and to the vise and tapped it. I didn't smack it real hard. And right now I'm at almost to 40 thousandths. Okay. Then after a while, after these things get kind of tore up like this, you probably want to throw these away and get a new one. These things are a dime a dozen. The next thing you're going to want to do after you get your gap, you're going to want to take your spark plugs and put just a little bit of anti-seize on them. This will help for the next guy who's in there. Hopefully they won't stick in the cylinder head too bad. So we're just going to coat just a little bit of anti-seize on here. And now all of our spark plugs have been gapped. They have a thin coat of anti-seize on them. And so let's go put them in the car. All right, so getting the front spark plugs out, the tool that I'm going to use is, this is actually a 3-inch magnetic spark plug remover. This is a magnetic socket. It's a 5/8 to fit the spark plugs. And what I did was I put a little 1 or 2 inch extension on the end, just give me a little extra room. I put it down in here. I took my impact gun. and I buzz those out. The front three are pretty simple, pretty explanatory. The back ones, I'm going to use my air ratchet. I did break them free with the 3/8 regular ratchet. I already got one of them out. These spark plugs are definitely looking pretty bad. They're definitely well used. Okay. So my favorite spark plug socket is the one that's magnetic. You can get ones that have a little rubber piece in there, but when they get engine oil on them, they tend to fall out. So I like these. And now we're going to put some in. So let me grab those real quick. Now, with a spark plug, you do not want to drop it in there, because if you drop it in there, then that little electrode can end up getting pushed in. So I'm just going to start it in there. We'll start each one by hand, and then we're going to torque them to specification. So let me get these started, and then we'll come back to it. I went ahead and put the spark plugs in the rear and torqued them down. It's the same procedure as the front. It's just had to lean across the whole engine to do it. But anyways, so put your torque wrench on here, set it to 18 foot-pounds, and listen for that click. Hopefully the microphone picked that up. Okay, 18 foot-pounds. Notice I'm holding the torque wrench at the very end of the handle. Okay. Okay. So 18 foot-pounds is your spec for your torque on your spark plugs. I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm probably going to go ahead and put the coil packs back in, just to keep anything from falling down in there. So let's do that next, and I'll come back to you. Okay, so we are using, I'm going to replace the 3 in the back, and that part number is UF 267. So those are going in the back. The reason why I'm replacing the back ones is because they're harder to get to. Just about a month ago, this vehicle was at the beach, and the cylinder 5 misfire had happened, and I replaced the one in the rear. So we're going to put 3 brand new ones in the back because they're hard to get to, and we're going to reuse the old ones from the front. Okay, so if you remembered, I put a 1, a 2, and a 3, and what I'm using is dielectric grease, just putting a little dab in there. Okay, so I'll put those in here, and now I'm going to put the ones in the back. Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to hold off plugging them in for just right now. I mainly just want to put them on there just to keep something from falling down in there and have to fish it back out. I think now might be a good time. We may go ahead and put the timing belt back on. I decided to go ahead and install the coil packs, as you can tell, on the front and back. Now, the coil packs, the bolts here to hold them down are 71 inch-pounds, which seems to be about what all the other things, all the other bolts so far have been. I also installed the little nuts that hold that wiring harness in on the back side. I make sure to click in all my coil packs. All these are torqued down to spec. I also went ahead and put these back on. And now that I got my coil packs installed, I want to make sure to grab I'll take one out so that way you can see what it looks like. These were a special little bolt. You should have put them with your coil pack stuff, but you put them in here to hold this wiring harness down. And I don't have a torque spec on these. You're going to use your E6 inverted torques. And I'm just going to say these aren't going to be very important to torque down, so we're just going to snug them up. It's probably 71 inch-pounds, be my guess, but we're just going to snug them up. Those aren't that important. Okay, so went ahead and did that just to get it out of the way, get a few more bolts, loose bolts that were in the way, get them out. All right, so now we need to start thinking about putting the timing belt on. I need to get that center idler pulley on, and we need to make sure that our camshafts are still lined up, because I know they moved a little bit when I was taking the cam sprocket off and putting it back on. So let me get that stuff straight, and I'll be coming back to you. So there's some stuff we have to go over before we put the timing belt on, and I wanted to double make sure I was right. So I went through the directions, and I want to show you that this timing belt actually has arrows, and these arrows point away from the engine, so they're supposed to be pointing out that way. So the belt's going to go on like that. So make sure you pay attention. Some timing belts it matters, and some that don't. If you notice, we talked about earlier, this thing has marks on it. These two marks are straight lines, and this right here is for one camshaft, and this is for the other. This mark right here looks a little different. I don't know if you can tell in the video here, but it's got like these little dots. This is for your crankshaft. So just so you know, that line lines up with one of the marks on the crankshaft. All right, that's what you need to know about your timing belt. Another thing you're going to want to get is at least two of these right here. These are called spring clips. You get them at any office supply store. This will help you hold the timing belt to the camshafts. If you don't have spring clips, I have used before in the past zip ties. So just a little tech tip there for you. Another thing you're going to want to probably get to move the camshafts, you're probably going to want to get a breaker bar, because if you use a ratchet and you're going so far in one direction, it's going to slip and twirl around. So you're probably not going to want to use a ratchet in order to move the camshafts. I decided in the back one to use a shallow 17 millimeter. You may want to get a deep 17 millimeter, and I have a deep 14 millimeter to put the tensioner pulley back on. So I took the old tensioner, tossed it aside, but before I did that, I grabbed this bolt, and this bolt is a special bolt. It's got that shoulder on there that it rides on, so you can't just put any old bolt in there. So I got that bolt ready. So this is the idler pulley. The tensioner pulley, don't forget, get that washer that I almost lost at one time. Put that on there, get it ready. And this right here is your actual tensioner. Now, you do not want to pull this out. When you do that, that pin's going to come out. You don't want to pull this pin out until you have all your timing marks lined up and everything's tightened down, and it's the last step you do before you start reassembling the timing cover and all that stuff. If you do, it's not the end of the world. You just got to put it in a vise and push this back down and put that pin back there and line it back up. Okay? Not the end of the world. Now, there may be a couple ways of doing this. I want to say that at one time, if I remember correctly, I may install this last. In other words, get everything on there, and then I might push that down and install it. So we're going to go ahead and give this a try. The book says you should start with the crankshaft and then work counterclockwise. So then put it on this one and then put it on the back one. We may have to turn a camshaft a little bit using this tool, like turn it back, get the tooth on, then turn it back. Got to fiddle around with it a little bit. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to put the tensioner on first. Let's get that on there. The pulley anyways, maybe not the actual tensioner, and we'll go from there. Before we get rolling on the timing belt, there was one thing I forgot. We need to replace the crank seal. Okay, so I am using the part number TCS 46195, and I am also going to use I'm going to attempt this anyways. This right here is what you use to open up paint cans. Most every homeowner has one of these. I'm going to try this. I may have to take a screw. I've also taken screws and like putting in there and then grabbing a pair of pliers and like pulled them out like that. You just gotta be really careful because you don't want to damage the crank or the oil pump housing or anything like that. So I'm going to push this in there and hopefully be able to pull it out. They do make special tools for removing crank seals. I don't have one. Since we're going to be removing it, we're going to need something to install it. Again, I don't have the installation tool, so I looked around and I basically, quote unquote, made a tool. This is the Crank Seal Installer 2000, patent pending here. I went to my plumbing department in my shop, which I don't have a whole lot of PCV stuff, but I found this adapter, and this adapter is pretty much the same size as that seal. So when I go back together with it, I'm going to push this in my fingers as best I can. I'm going to put this over top the crank and then hit this to push it the rest of the way in. The good thing about using an adapter or something like this is that it puts even pressure all the way around. So anyways, we'll see how this works. Hopefully it'll go good. All right, let me position the camera to get you a good view in here, and we'll see if we can get this thing out. I went ahead and took the liberty of taking this off. Now this did fight me coming off there a little bit. I guess there's maybe a little nick or something in the crank pulley. I just had to kind of go back and forth with it, back and forth, and massage it a little bit. You may, I don't know, take a file if you wanted to, and you could, just kind of smooth up right here a little bit. I went back and forth about 10 or 15 times, just real easy, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it finally slid off of there. One thing I guess you could do is maybe put a little lube on there. Okay, so let's see if we can get this thing to pop off of here, and hopefully it works. So I'm gonna put my little paint can thing in here like this. I'm gonna try to grab the back side of it. Okay, now I can either try to pull it, or maybe I can get a small pry bar. I'm just kind of going with my instinct here. It's not something I've done a whole lot of. Let's see here if I can pry against something. Let me see if I can find another pry bar. Maybe like a 2 or 3 footer here. And put it right here. Put it in the lip. Let's see if this works. Whoop, there it is. Man, that worked really good. So hopefully you saw that. Glad I got that on camera. I put the longer pry bar, got like a 3-foot pry bar, put it in there, yanked on it, popped it out. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is take a rag, just kind of wipe up, make sure everything came out, everything looks good. I'm going to compare it to my other crank seal. They look to be same size, everything, just make sure it looks right. I think I might take a little dielectric grease here. I want to put just a little bit. We're just going to a little bit to get to smoothly go on there, hopefully. Make sure my spring is still in the back of there. All right. That crank seal actually wasn't leaking, but I figured since we're in here and doing all this, might as well go and replace it. Okay. Pushed it in about as far as I could. Now we're going to see if my special tool here works. Let's see here. Trying to work around the camera. I think this side's too big. Oops, sorry. It's in there. Might just take a little bit of dielectric grease. I got some here in my hand. That might aid my sprocket going back on. Put some on the inside of the sprocket too. Okay. So now let's put the sprocket back on. Okay, perfect. All right. So that is how you replace the crank seal. Now I'm going to get ready to install the timing belt. I went and cleaned all the major grease off my fingers because, you don't want to get the new timing belt greasy. All right, like earlier we were talking about which line to use. I'm going to use this one right here, the ones with the dots here. And that's going to line up with this mark I made right here. So let me get this on there. Kind of feed that up in there for right now. And then this little guy right here, we left this loose. I didn't take it all the way off. Left it loose so I wouldn't lose it. He should try to help hold your timing belt in place. I'm going to double check this with my flashlight. Yep. All right. So what I'm going to show you here, if you look, see how that mark is lining up with the line on the crank? Now, according to the directions, it says that it wants you to go counterclockwise. So here's the crank. Let's go up to the front camshaft, and we'll line the marks up there. So the directions said to go counterclockwise, and I don't normally do that, and so I was kind of trying something new. What I've always done, at least on these Toyotas, is I've always started with this crankshaft and then went that way, right? That's always what's worked for me. I tried going counterclockwise, following the directions. It didn't work for me. I got frustrated. So here is my suggestion to you. This is what works for me. You do what works for you. I started here, okay? I got my spring clamp on right there. Now I'm going to go to the bottom and we're going to put it on here at the bottom, and then I'm going to take the timing belt and I'm going to just with my hands run it up that way and around the sprocket, and I should be fairly close. Okay. So now I'm going to put this on. I'm pulling pretty tight. Oops, sorry. Pull it pretty tight. Hold it with your left hand. Then your right hand, you put that little nub in, that little holder. And you hold with your left hand, you tighten it down with your finger. All right. So now the right cam is in, and that one is in too. So I can either reach up through there, or maybe we can just let her down. That's one thing about this job. If you have a lift, it's up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And it does take a little more time, but it does save your back. If you don't have a lift and it's just, you got one wheel off, and you don't mind jumping up and down you get up off your butt and your knees and getting back up on your feet, and it's all right. All right, so now I'm going to attempt to try to get you somewhat of a good camera position here. All right. So this side right here towards the front, it should have all the tension in it, and the other side should have some slack in it. All right, let's take this thing. very close right now. I may have to turn the cam back just a little bit. All right. Right now I am on it. I painted my marks with whiteout to make it more visible. Just to make sure, I want to use my mirror. Yep, I double checked it. Everything's good to go. Now, here comes the tricky part. I need to put this either in. So I'm just going to take that cam back a little bit. Make sure I get as much slack here as I can. I want to take this either. See if it'll let me start it. Okay, it started. And all I'm going to do right now, just put it in there hand tight. I'm not trying to torque it down yet. I'll look up the torque spec here in a minute. The tensioner, same way. I just kind of snugged it. I did not torque it down yet. We will get there here in a few minutes. And come on. All right, just a little snug. Okay. My marks are still on the cam here. My mark is still on the cam there. I'm around the water pump. Now, time to take it back up. Let's get that tensioner installed. So, my mark is here. You can kind of see back there, my mark is right there. And we're on down there on the crank. So we are now down at the bottom. I've checked my mark here. I did have to take the tensioner back off because the tensioner pulley back off because I needed to get the tensioner, which is sitting right here, to get to just slide in there into place. Now, it's not bolted in, just sitting in there. One note I want to tell you is make sure your power steering pulley is all the way down against here because you won't be able to get your bolts in. All right, so I got the tensioner back here. I got the washer in place. And now I want to see if I can get it back in the place here. Hopefully it won't fight me too much. Remember that washer on the back side. Do not forget that. It is important. All right, I'm just gonna, I got it started by hand. Let's give it a little snuggie. All right, so all your tension should be on this side towards the front. And your looseness should be on this side towards the tensioner because it's about to get tight. All right, make sure you grab your tensioner bolts. They are kind of special bolts. It's one that's long, and it's got like this little shoulder on there. And then this right here is shorter, and it's got a special shoulder as well. So they're kind of special bolts. Try not to lose them. See if I can get the top one on. The power steering pulley is just right in the way. I mean, slam in the way. I'll put it like that. We're going to try to tighten that down. We'll use, just getting there by our fingers is the first thing. See, I can't pull that pin yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the power steering pulley, put it up where I can get right to that first 12 millimeter. And I'm going to get a long extension. And I think it's my 12 right here. I'm not going to tighten up all the way. I just got it put in there. Now, power steering pulley is going to have to come all the way down. Take it like this again. And we should be able to get onto that 12 just enough. Of course, drop the light. All right, so I'm gonna give it a good snug right now. I'll come back and torque it here in a little bit. All right, so let's go double check everything. The bottom we can tell is on, so let's put her down and check it from the top. We are at the top now, and if you look, that cam mark is lined up with that, which is lined up with that, and also same for the rear. I think it's time now to find some torque specs. Let's torque this down. We will then take it up, and then we'll torque the timing belt tensioner pulley and the tensioner itself, and then we'll pull that pin